Good morning and welcome to Unusual Activity powered by FinancialJuice.com with George Avedon and Milton Marmonides. Happy New Year to all. We hope that your festivities were fun and exciting. And here we are back to reality of the markets and sentiment, and the news is nonstop as always. Certainly continuing a little bit of the holiday feel into today, but the anticipation is for Monday to be full swing with respect to participants and activity. So this morning, S&P 500 futures are higher by 9.00 at 2061.50. We certainly had a interesting bit of a sell-off slash profit taking at the end, last half of Wednesday's trading. We have this morning also crude oil, West Texas Intermediate crude, lower by $1 and a penny at $52.30. We have gold lower by $10.80 at $1,173.40. We have the DXY, the dollar index here, folks. This is the bigger story here at 90.882, higher by 0.613. This is an index. If you're new to FX, if you're new to tracking the dollar index, the DXY is an index of the US dollar versus 10 other currencies. A very important index to watch as we see activity in the marketplace. Euro, the other big story, lower down to the 1.2 handle at 1.2040, down by 0.0067. So an interesting dynamic in the currency markets as we watch this market activity unfold here. Let's dive into where we were on Wednesday, excuse me. So S&P 500, first half of the day, rather tight range, then continued downtrend into the close. Now, this could have been attributed to perhaps a decrease in participants, decrease in activity, and perhaps one can look at it as, if the bulls were not, some of the larger bulls were not participating, did the bears, win that smaller battle? So the S&P 500 lower by 1.03% at 2058.90. Dow Jones Industrial Average lower by 0.89% at 17,823.07. Coming in a little bit lower off of that 18,000 plus highs. On the NASDAQ, lower by 0.87 at 4736.06. So if we dive into what's making news this morning, as we said, the larger stories here, folks, is the euro weakness, dollar strength. We see that happening all the time. Very rarely will you see the two move in tandem. This is more or less an inverse relationship here. We have continued weakness in oil. We had a little bit of a rebound on Wednesday in the second half of trading, coming up, leading up to the 2:30 settlement time of oil. But again, we're seeing continued weakness in oil, currently at $52.33. From a macroeconomic perspective, we're seeing comments out of Draghi indicating that QE, or at least hinting that QE is on its way. Certainly, we see the response in the euro, and really talking about this notion of deflation. We have been I'm going to go on a limb here. We've been out in front on the deflation side for quite a while here. There was this continued conversation among European nations, in China, and various other central bankers, really talking about this notion of lower, quote unquote, lower inflation expectations. Remember, the target is 2%, and there's a reason that it's there. Um, target lower inflation expectations, but really the reality is that the risk, the larger risk here is deflation. We do not want deflation entering the picture here, because things will turn rather sour once deflation enters the picture here. So that's very, very something we're watching rather closely. As always, we're monitoring situation in the Middle East. If anything new comes out of the situation with respect to ISIL will certainly bring that up, but it's been status quo, if you will. I hate to call a situation where there's military activity, label it as status quo, but in terms of this, there's nothing new that's coming out of that particular region. Specific news coming out that will significantly impact markets. So that's something that we're continuing to take a look at. And again, one of the largest stories here is oil, and how will each individual country respond to that? If oil continues to decline, what's going to happen? Well, we made a few lists for you in this presentation that will talk about how countries should, what countries will do, what central bankers will do. Something just to keep an eye on as we're coming into 2015 in full swing on Monday morning. And really, what will Russia do with the Ukraine? Interesting the way Putin is always putting himself out. Remember, he's ex-KGB, and he's very large approval rating in Russia for Putin. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, this morning on the macroeconomic activity, awaiting. So we had PMI numbers close to 9 o'clock. We have ISM manufacturing index at 10, construction spending at 10, and of course on a weekly basis we have the Fed balance sheet and money supply at 4:30. Also, so here's what we're looking at for 2015, and then once we'll get through the list, we'll have Milt's view on these lists, and also his view on technical analysis coming into this morning. So number one, we're always looking for the Fed decisions, commentary. When are the rate hikes going to start? An indication is midsummer, that June, July, August time. Also, what's that impact on treasuries? We'll dive into specific treasuries, but we'll take a look at the 10-year currently at 10.183. Okay, so that's still rather low, where the analysts were predicting at the very beginning of 2014 where all these rates will be, and that's something that we're monitoring very closely. Also, global central bank actions, commentary. We saw this with Draghi within the last day or so, with respect to, is there more easing? Is there more quantitative easing? What's Japan going to do in the coming year? They're quote unquote in recession again. Is there more risk of stagflation for them? What's going to happen to the yen? Also, what's coming out of Russian central bank? Will they be supporting the ruble? Also out of China, will they continue to be comfortable with slower growth rate? And of course, where's the U.S. Positioned in this? Additionally, oil, natural gas. We've seen a consistent decrease in nat gas and oil, obviously. Where's it going to be in 2015? What's the situation in Russia and Ukraine? How will Russia and the Chinese relationship mature? Are we going back to Soviet communist relationship with between Russia and China because of this hampering of activity by the West? Will the West's pressure on Russia develop into something from a geopolitical perspective? Also, in the U.S. crude exports, new regulations from Obama for 2015. What does that mean for shale drillers? And that's the larger story here, specifically in the U.S. Because remember, with the infamous OPEC meeting on Thanksgiving Day, with not reducing output. It's a game theory. It was talked about by us. It was talked about later by the Wall Street Journal. And also, what's the activity from the macroeconomic perspective? What kind of activities will we see? A continued decline in macroeconomic activity in Eurozone, China, Japan, and where will the U.S. come in with economic activity? So here's the what ifs, guys. And this I'll bring these up, and then we'll bring Milton. Here's the what ifs. What if we have global deflation in the in the European markets? What if we have global deflation in that's spreading into in Japan? What if we have continued weakness, economic slowdown in China? What is the implication globally? If we have continued oil weakness, what's going to happen in 2015 to the shale drillers, to OPEC, to non-OPEC countries? There's a tremendous amount of countries out there that absolutely rely on oil and other commodities for their revenue, for their GDP. Also, if we continue to have dollar strength and euro weakness, what does that mean? Also, if we have, as we said, economic slowdown, where is the safe haven that we're looking for globally if we have all of these things continue into 2015? So that's something absolutely critical. We wanted to spend some time on this. Milt, what's on your mind? Certainly a lot of moving parts here. Economically, going into 2015, we have oil weakness, we have dollar strength, euro weakness. At the same time, we have markets near all-time highs. What's on your mind? What are you thinking about coming into today and the rest of 2015?
In my opinion, George, to be honest, nothing really matters. You just described. I was reading articles over the weekend. Not over the weekend, but over the the holiday break, and people, are just, they just don't care. No one cares. No one cares that oil is at $50 a barrel. No one cares that China's PMIs are hitting the low 50s, the breaking 50s. No one cares that Europe's back in the news again as a disaster and Greece is falling apart again. No one cares about anything. The market just keeps going higher. It's going to keep going higher until reality finally sets in. I sound like a broken record because I say it all the time. Right now, the mentality is buying this market, because if you sit back and not even look at the stock market and you looked at numbers and what's going on in the world, you think the market would probably be at 9,000 now, not 17,800. The S&P over 2058, and the comp back near almost all-time highs. Who really knows? Everyone's talking about the January effect right now. How goes January, so goes the year. How goes the first 5 days of January, so goes January, so goes the year. You're going to have a lot of this going around. We'll see what happens. I'm not here to predict things. I'm here to just give, our opinions, our views. But in all honesty, in reality, I just think the market is very overvalued, and it's kind of scary that no one else is actually realizing this. So that's just my opinion. That's one man's opinion. That's what makes a market, So enough of my rambling. Let me just jump on some technicals. Let's go. Hold on one second. I'm just got to put up my... Okay, here we go. So let's just start off with the ES. ES currently we're looking at that 20 right now we're at the 2063.75 pre-market. We're looking at the 2060 level as support, 2070 as the initial first round resistance, and then the ideal 2085 resistance levels. You're in somewhat of a tradable range right here, so we're going to keep an eye on how it trades, and we're going to keep an eye on the volume. We think it's going to be one of those low volume days. Pickup should start next week again, but the levels we're watching on the ES, 2070 resistance, 2060 currently right now on support, ideal level of that 2050 level, ideal support on the ES. Would love to see it go there. If you're a bull, love to see it go there and bounce right off of it. If you're a bear, love to see it break that. If it breaks 2050, it could easily go back to 2020s and the 2000 level. So the numbers we're watching short term: 2060 support, which it's on right here, 2070 resistance, ideal 2050 level support. Let's jump on to the VIX. How many times do we mention the VIX, the 14 level in VIX? 14 level seems to be the ideal support in VIX. Hit it again, almost to a T. It hit 14. We mentioned the call buying in the VIX during that level when it was hitting the 14. And what happened? The VIX traded higher, closed at 1920 on Wednesday. So right now, the play seems to be buying the VIX in the 14s, selling in the 20s. Buying in the 14s, selling in the 20s. Worked it one more time. We bought in the 14s. Right now we're near the 20. We're going to keep an eye on it. This is resistance right here. If it could break this, I think we're going to see new highs in the VIXs. But right now, we're close to resistance. We're going to watch this level. And if anything changes, we will give our feedback. But right now, it's right near resistance, keeping an eye at this level. We'll see where it opens this morning. It should open down with the market strength. So we'll see what happens when the market opens. Oil, yet again, down every day. Another way I feel like a broken record. It's down every day. 275 right now. Broke that 5360 number. We mentioned that once that number breaks, you're going to see continued weakness. What happened? The number broke, the downtrend extended, recent low of 5203, continued weakness. Many people are talking the 40 handles. We're looking to see if it hits that 40 handle. You had a lot of rumblings over the holiday days, past few days, of many people trying to get OPEC to cut the numbers. Will it happen? At this point, I think a few more times of this pressure, you may get something. But as of now, their mentality is set forward to nothing done until at least until the next time they meet. But right now, oil 52.75, 52 support, resistance levels. We're looking at that 53.60 number as resistance, and then ideally the 55 level that we've been mentioning for days as the level where you wanted to see go back into and start trading to build a tradable bottom. But right now, 52 number on the downside, 53.60 resistance, watching the tradable range on CL, and keeping an eye on the volume, because the volume has been up there. Even with the market volume depleted, oil volume is still there. So that's an interesting thing to think about. Lastly, gold, you're in the 1150-1200 tradable range. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's 1172.20 right now. We're watching these levels, watching this market, watching the volume. Volume is not there on gold. We're going to keep an eye on it. We mentioned 1150 support, 1200 resistance. It seems to be attractive to that 1200 as of now. We're going to see if it goes back up to that level, and at that point we can reevaluate the position. But right now, you're in that tradable range between 1150 and 1200. We're going to watch it. We're going to let you know if we see anything different. But as of now, it's in part to what we've been discussing. And lastly, I want to start mentioning the U.S. dollar. The strength in the U.S. dollar is quite amazing, I must say. Many people don't even mention it. Many people don't even discuss it. Many people don't want to discuss it. But the strength in the U.S. dollar has been extreme. You don't see moves like this in currencies that often, with no repercussions to the stock market. So it's interesting to see what is going on with the euro. Interesting to see what's going on with the U.S. dollar and why it is not affecting any markets besides oil, which no one even mentions. But I think it's a clear reflection on the U.S. dollar. So right now, U.S. dollar strength continues. Euro weakness continues. We'll see what happens moving forward on the currencies. But as of now, I sit back and I look at things and I just don't really understand what's going on. But that's why I just do day to day. I'm not, I'm not I'm not an economist. I don't think 6 months down the road. I think today, tomorrow, give me 3 days and I'll be a happy camper. But as of now, you know, it just seems it just seems very interesting, George. I'm gonna say that the whole, outside the stock market, how things are not looking as good and peachy, but everything looks great when you take away everything else but the stock market.
Yeah, Mill, I think you and I talk about this all the time offline, and the reality is it's as if the equity markets are I, I, I want to be a little careful in saying this, maybe perhaps a beacon of possible strength in terms of where to put your money. We know that there has been strength in U.S. Treasuries. Is the U.S. equity market another vehicle to go after the dividend paying securities? Another way of getting yield out there that's relatively, I say relatively, safer than other investments, and that's something that we're watching, and certainly everybody has their opinions, and but we feel that certainly the stock market strength has been somewhat surprising, considering that there's been some slowdowns. But at the same time, U.S. activity, U.S. macroeconomic activity has been positive. We're anticipating some rate hikes to begin in the summertime. So I think that's, and again, very interesting to see where we'll go with the treasuries. That's where the most interest for me takes place. How will the treasuries come up over 3% in the 10-year when we're currently at 2.174? I think that's the larger story here. So let's dive into where we are in overnight trading. In Asia, we were lower by 1.57% in the Nikkei. The Hang Seng higher by 1.07%. Shanghai higher by 2.18%. Also in Europe currently we are at, let's take a temperature check here, FTSE lower by 0.18%, DAX is lower by 0.45%, IBEX higher by 1.01%, and the CAC is lower by 0.15%. Now, this is the list that we have for oil ETF, ETNs that we like to monitor with respect to the volatility in the oil futures themselves in the West Texas Intermediate crude. Really, the question here is, how are U.S. producers going to respond? How long before will we see blood in the streets? Will we see, is this new regulations in the U.S. Going to be a little bit of a lifeline to the U.S. producers? And that's something that we are monitoring very closely. Now let's dive into specific commodities, energy, and raw materials. Again, West Texas Intermediate crude lower by 61 cents at $52.66. Gasoline lower by 0.0338 at 1.4391. Natural gas futures higher by 0.085 at 2.974. We're taking a look at briefly on the nat gas charts on the daily basis. It's quite a bit lower, bounced off that low at 2.805. If we take a look at, let's say, a 5-minute chart on that, we've been coming up. We'll put that chart up just briefly for you folks at what we're looking at. This is nat gas futures on the bottom half of the page here. These are the last few trading days. If we see from Monday were as high as 3.211. So significant decline in these net gas futures, a low of 2.805, and that was that was this morning. So again, watching that rather closely. Heating oil lower by 0.0249 at 1.8087. So that's something that we are keeping a track of. Also, let's come back to the presentation here. We're looking at gold as well, as Milton said, currently trading at 1170.99. It is range bound. It likes that 1150 to 1200 range, lower by $13.20. Silver lower by actually higher by 0.006 at $15.60. We have platinum lower by $16.70 at $1,192.80. And remember, it was above that 1,200 mark for a little bit of time here, just coming in a bit. Cocoa lower by $1 at $29.01. Let's dive into and remember something, and we want to bring this up. The fact that there's a strength in the U.S. dollar, it has an effect, an absolute effect on crude oil and other commodities, precious metals. They are dollar denominated. So the fact that there is the dollar is more expensive, there's an impact on these particular commodities, precious metals, raw materials. So that's something that's we're keeping an eye on as well. On the yields, we have the 5-year at 1.66%. We have the 10-year at 2.169, and we have the 30-year at 2.739. Rather significant bids still in that 10 and 30-year, where we're holding well below 3% yield on that 30-year. So again, interesting. We'll see what happens with the U.S. Treasury yield curve, and how it remember the 2 and the 5 have come up a little bit, and certainly a decrease in the 10 and the 30-year. Slightly flatter looking yield curve if you go out from the 3-month to the 30-year and comparing to where we were about a year ago. And that brings up this question of, if rates start climbing, if excuse me, if we have the Fed beginning to raise rates, what's that implication? Lots of folks, lots of analysts talking about the fact that they're anticipating Treasury rates going to be higher in 2015. So that's something that we are monitoring very closely. Also, let's jump into specific securities that we are seeing this morning. Let's go into the syndicates first. We have TGTX. TGTX files 250 million mixed security shelf. IBDN files $100 million mixed security shelf, and ENZ registers 20 million in shares through a controlled equity offering sales agreement. Remember, those of you who are new to syndicates, a mixed shelf is a combination, a way for this company to issue more shares, whether it's on the equity side, on the debt side, to get more funding. It could be anywhere from preferreds, common shares, to convertibles, to fixed income, several different options for companies to raise money, especially using the secondary syndicates there. Also, let's jump into what's moving this morning. Certainly, LINE line to cut dividend to $1.25 per share. The conversation is with oil coming in, and what happens to the smaller drillers. Will they be cutting dividends? Will they retain earnings? And will they continue to have the capex, the capital expenditures? How is that going to be transformed in activity by these smaller drillers? What's going to happen with their operational integrity? And so, is this the beginning of dividends being cut by some of these smaller energy names? Also, Brainstorm Cell Therapeutics up 11% in pre-market ahead of January 5th release of stem cell therapy data. BCLI was trading at 550. Take a look at BCLI this morning, currently at $7.51. And we are about just a few seconds away from the opening bell. There we are, opening bell in New York. Also, PWRD have a going private proposal indicating that there is a $20 per share offer, currently at $18.41, quite a bit higher by about 16% in very early trading. Also, a few stocks that are being circulated around desks this morning. LAKE, which is Lakeland, being circulated around social media and chat rooms around. Currently, the stock is lower by about 0.4% in Lakeland, and we'll take a look at Plug this morning as well, currently at $2.96, lower by about 1.5%. Also, a few mentions of Macau casinos revenue down. We've mentioned Macau casinos being lower, or revenue being lower within recently. So these are the stocks that are being impacted. We have LVS, Wynn, MPEL, NGM, Caesars, BYD. So these are the stocks that are being discussed with respect to internet gambling as well, growth stalls in the U.S. Also online, LINE being discussed around desks, possibly a short play with oil getting weaker and weaker. So again, this is just something that's being circulated around desks. Also, PBR Petróleo Brasileiro breaks to pre-market lows. Currently, the stock is down about 4.5% in very early trading. Let's do a few insider transactions that we've detected in after hours from Wednesday and pre-market this morning. We have another one in FUND. We have $150,000 purchase. Currently, stock is at $7.27. SCIO, Diamond Technology Corp. We have just about a $90,000 purchase. Currently, stock is at 90 cents in very early trading. MLNK, Global Solutions, we have $124,000 purchase, currently at $3.65 in early trading, down about 2.5%. And CLUB, Town Sports International, we have a $1.2 million purchase, rather impressive there. Stock is higher by about 5.7% in early trading, currently at $6.29. So let's have a quick check on where we are in the markets. S&P futures higher by 11.75. We have crude oil still lower at $52.88, lower by about 40 cents. And we have gold this morning still lower by $13.30 at $1,170.80. And again, the bigger story here, folks, is the U.S. dollar at 90.938, which has continued to making highs even from as early as this summer, higher by 0.668. And euro certainly continues its weakness at 1.2033. So that's something. So these are all a lot of moving parts, or even on a slower volume day this morning. But again, keep an eye on, not all the participants are in yet, so some of these moves may feel like they're slightly exaggerated. So again, slight cautious there. But again, we'll see how the day turns out. Thank you for listening to us on Unusual Activity, powered by Financial Juice, with George Abbott on Milton Marmonides. Have a great day.